Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another Tea Time video. This is where I get to sit down with you guys and talk to you as if you were here in the room with me, much like most streamers would do if I could actually live stream. Here's hoping for 2020 being a better year for my internet speeds. So this time around, I don't want to beat the dead horse too much, but we are once again, for the final time, going to be talking about data mining. Last week, we talked roughly about the data mining issues as one of the topics, but this time around I wanted to go through the community reactions from you guys in the comment section, as well as reach out directly to Final Fantasy XIV's subreddit Discord and talk primarily to one of the people who were the most vocal and open about it, the former prominent data mine aficionado, none other than Icarus Twine. A lot of other content creators have, by his own admission, named him directly without so much as a peep in his direction, asking him primarily about all of this, so obviously that was something I wanted to do. However, he, amongst others, were part of a much greater string of data mining individuals, greater group of people who would data mine the game and bring all of the latest news from those in-game files every time there was a new patch to the community in the form of pictures and information, and a lot of that was spoiler tagged, and for the most part the general public had the choice of looking at those channels or not. So specifically, this is in regards to the recent data mining bans, of which Icarus was actually implicated in, as Square Enix were cracking down on a recent situation. I decided to brief some questions and forward them to Icarus to take some time out of his busy schedule of life and answer them to the best of his ability. So first of all, I asked what happened for those who didn't know in regards to the recent data mining bans. Icarus says the main issue first arose from another data miner who, like a lot of did, myself included, shared unreleased content via Twitter. In our experience, this has never been an issue, but by some bad luck, people who were trying to clear the Epic of Alexander first came across this content on Twitter and showed them during a live stream. This obviously sparked some attention to the Twitter account of the data miner and received a few million hits in a very short time. Upon the world first clear, plenty of people not knowledgeable about how data mining works or what it can achieve then started to spread things such as they used a private server to practice their clear, etc, etc. The Twitter data miner then received very vulgar death threats, as well as, I am to believe, the world first clear team. Said data miner was then subsequently banned on his main Final Fantasy XIV account for 10 days on the 13th of November 2019. Soon after, on the 22nd of November 2019, I myself was banned for 10 days with a reason of showcasing unreleased game content, and was warned if I was to continue data mining, then there would be further action taken. After removing the images and videos from all accounts and websites I knew that I had posted anything, I warned the public at large about the coincidence of two public data miners being banned in such a short time. 10 days later, I have now been unbanned and no longer break terms of service. End quote. My next question was, do you believe the world first team used data mining to an advantage or not, and why? To which Icarus says, I strongly believe that they did not use any data mining information to any advantage that someone might have seen within the first 2 minutes of the fight. Some status descriptions were shared publicly, which show when you hover over the status effect, and some in-game models were shown as well. None of this would give any different advantage over someone who has not seen these. When it comes to server emulation, this is impossible in the current state of any third-party software to emulate the fight. Any existing software out there is in no way able to know anything from the server beforehand, such as boss mechanics or a boss timeline, damage, causes of status effects, how to clear a mechanic, etc. Without actually having access to the Final Fantasy XIV official server, it is simply impossible. I then follow up, directly how has this changed the way that third-party developers and website staff work with Final Fantasy XIV? Will there be any impact on, say, how Gamer Escape or other external resources behave, now that much of the data is off-limits to some regard? Icarus says, specifically it is hard to say on the impact the news has had, but a lot of data mining channels on a lot of servers have been closed as a precaution. There has not been any change on websites as far as I know, and the community community relies on this information gathered by individuals to show the information they might not be able to get themselves easily or from Final Fantasy XIV's lodestone, such as quest details, next quest, Vista locations, and Fate locations. It is important to know that the main worry regarding these issues is unreleased content, which some community-based websites purposely do not share, in brackets, if they have access to such information. My next question was, did the changes directly alter your own interest in the game, or any of those you know, considering many Discord servers and presumably websites are being targeted by Square Enix after the Alexander Ultimate situation? Icarus says, it's important to know here that we as a community, especially myself, love this game and do not wish to ruin it. A lot of us see it as the rules were broke, we knew the risks, and we do not blame Square Enix for taking action. Speaking for myself, I considered myself a community member before, during, and still after these events, and will always continue to do so. The only disheartening part for me over the last month is part of the community have taken it upon themselves to send these death threats and vulgar messages to other fans of Final Fantasy XIV, data miners or not. After all of this, I am still happy to continue to play the game that I have played since 2013. And finally, my last question was, do you have any other points to share? Your beliefs perhaps on how this affects the game's health when we have games like World of Warcraft, of which have websites such as Wowhead and MMO Champion who actively profit from data mining significantly, whilst Blizzard doesn't take direct action, and in most cases it seems to work for building hype for future content for their games. Is it the case of Eastern development versus Western development in that approach? To which Icarus replies, the game will always be strong and continue on as it was and will still improve. Although I do wish for those who did decide to take offensive action to rumors without investigation to stop and think about what they might have caused for the community as a whole. With information websites, as far as I know, the differences here is no website is made with creating money in mind when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV. There are some who would say that Square Enix could have done things a bit differently, but Square Enix have always had a good community relationship, which is wherein lies the difference, I believe. They give respect and we give it back in enormous amounts. There is a surprising statistic that when I accidentally, without knowing the full consequences, let slip that Blue Mage was on the way a full 6 months before the actual release of a job, that the searches and discussion for terms like Final Fantasy XIV, new job, Blue Mage actually increased a lot more. There was a massive hype and excitement for the game as it was being talked about in all sorts of different media online, with this also leading into the announcement of Shadowbringers after the official announcement of Blue Mage. I believe that sometimes the little accidents might actually have helped the joy of the community and hopefully brought a new wave of people over to the game, end quote. So there we go, that's pretty much Icarus's viewpoint on the whole data mining bans and data mining in general. And I would definitely like to just take the time to thank him directly for taking time out of his busy schedule to actually give us some answers. Like I said before, he admitted to me that no one else had actually come forth and directly asked him. However, they had just mentioned him in various online media, which is rather unfortunate and very unjournalistic of the rest of our community that does make videos. So I'd like to shed light on the fact that there's nothing that Icarus has done that's not been for the benefit of trying to help and inform other people, and I for the most part completely believe that, and I'm siding with that sort of mentality. Data mining has always been something that when I used to play World of Warcraft was something that you just looked at and you got hyped about and you shared with your friends, but I guess Square Enix really are trying to clamp down on this stuff. But is this a direct response to just a death threat situation with Alexander Ultimate, or is this because for the most part, they're wanting to sort of censor the things that are to come? It's a very interesting situation, and I think for the most part, it's probably taken its course now, and, we probably won't see any more information on this. Whether this will actually stop data mining as a whole, well, very likely that won't happen, as people are prone to leak things and post them online regardless. It's just whether Square Enix want to actually track those people individually down or not. But that information will always be spoiled regardless. regardless. So, you know, those who do it publicly and on unofficial Reddit discords or stuff like that, perhaps that was the lesser of the two evils that could potentially happen now that, you know, more information and misinformation might be spread without that source of information. So that's my opinion personally as well, to follow up. Now, you guys had your own say on this, and there are a lot of different opinions. They're all correct. There's no like wrong answer here. There's nothing that we're going to be pointing out and saying you have a terrible attitude or anything like that. No. For the most part, the comment section was wonderful last time, and I would love it to continue like that. Constructive discussion is a very positive thing. It's very healthy to talk about our opinions, whether you hate data mining and you thank Square Enix for what they have done in this regard, or if you're on the side of actually liking data mining and you think that the punishment was difficult. Let's try and get along, because so far it's been really good and I'm very impressed with you guys. So first of all, let's look at some of those comments. So Mr. Pulati said 6 days ago, I love the data mining. I really enjoy seeing the new gear and items that come out on the new patches. I'm not big on combat updates. I could care less about that. It's kind of shitty because of people that are data mining for nefarious reasons, as in getting hints to clear new stuff quicker, but I don't see how finding out what new items look like is a big deal, end quote. So I think really, you know, if you start data mining, you're going to get, for the most part, get multiple different pieces of information, and I suppose it's very difficult to sort of segregate what's a beneficial piece of mined information and what's actually just a piece of glamour, for example. But where do you draw the line is really, you know, the big question. Jason Lionheart says, I'm glad it might stop. It will be nice to be genuinely surprised when a new glamour drops. However, it would be hypocritical of me to say that, because I modify the game, and I love modding and creating mods. So yeah, that's a different perspective for sure. In regards to that, Jason, I personally don't think that the data mining and leak situation will actually stop. I think that this will just stop, as I say, the main source of that information being quite as easily publicly available. I don't know the sort of like the stance that Reddit is going to take. You know, the Final Fantasy XIV subreddit, the unofficial subreddit, I should say, are actually going to take in regards to data mining posts, because there are still several hundred of them already on there. So I still think that this is going to be a situation that where we still get things posted on social media about upcoming unreleased content. I don't think you're going to be completely able to avoid that. But again, you know, you do modify the game. So that's another question entirely. Where do we draw the line between data mining, breaking the terms of service that way, and breaking the terms of service and admitting that you modify the game? It's a two-way street, isn't it? And I'm not sure. I mean, we talked about previously with the policies they choose to enforce and the policies they choose to be relaxed on. And will we really need to have a death threat situation with the modding community before that evolves into the situation we have with data mining? It's really quite a big open question, isn't it? Random Korean guy breaks up all of this with his comment. Not sure if it's too late to ask for the next video, but I was wondering if you could do more Untitled Goose Game playthrough videos. I thought of getting the game myself, but without your hilarious commentary, it wouldn't be nearly as entertaining. So that has actually helped to sort of break up the monotony a little bit just with this comment. Thank you so much for your comments on that. I will definitely be playing more of the Untitled Goose Game. The response I got was absolutely fantastic, and it's actually given me ideas for other projects as well. I know that's not data mining related, but it was the next comment down, and I did want to answer it. So thank you, random Korean guy. Look for more funny stuff in the future. So back to data mining. Miguel Mota says, I think the data mining in add-ons has had a very negative effect on World of Warcraft's gameplay, but Blizzard is usually very quiet with announcements, only coming every few months. Square communicates what is coming up better. Every few weeks they got a live letter or a convention or an interview of some sort. My opinion is that I would like to see a damage meter in-game. I hate having to use third-party programs. I prefer it if the developers themselves make a better UI than having to download insecure third-party software and being conned into making accounts. And which he says in brackets here, curse account, then forcibly made into a Twitch account, as an example, and then just ruthlessly enforce the rules. This is what I think would be best, end quote. So that's an interesting point, the idea of damage meters in the game. A lot of people are very much in the negative negative aspect towards having implications of any form of add-ons. But then we have stuff in Final Fantasy XI where we have damage meters and various other add-ons. So I don't think it really completely ruined World of Warcraft per se. Like, it wasn't, the end of the world, although it did have an impact on the community as a whole in terms of social interaction with others. But recently, with the other policies that Square Enix have implemented, where talking about mods in the game is prohibited and you can be banned temporarily or permanently for that, for vulgar behavior, and there's even some examples of some sort of borderline, not really an issue, but trolling sort of situations that ended up getting people banned as well. So a lot of the people where I go into a group myself don't really communicate that much. I mean, I always say hello, how's everyone doing? And for the most part, I don't really get much of a reaction, whether that's because people, recognize me and don't want to be a part of a video or say something that might, get them in trouble regardless of any of the facts, or whether if they're just deliberately not trying to say anything or try to keep it as brief as possible out of fear of that. They're still thinking what they're thinking behind the keyboard, they're just not typing it. So I suppose making World of Warcraft add-ons more, prevalent and more accepted means that you can talk about them in the game, and to some regard, people use that information to sort of exploit others and say, their DPS isn't enough to join their content, etc. It's a whole different kettle of worms and a different question entirely, but I think for the most part, you definitely have a point there, and Square Enix does have quite a lot of communication. Their communication about 14 is a lot better than it ever used to be, for sure. Especially if you compare the amount of developer blogs and community posts and community live streams that we have pretty much every week now with Duty Commenced and the PvP streams, etc., compared to when the game first, had its 2.0 iteration. We only had a live letter every couple of months or so, and that was pretty much our whole source of information with a sort of very relaxed lodestone post sort of frequency. So they have definitely improved on that communication and interaction with the community in the past couple of years for sure. Anyway, thank you kindly for your comment, Miguel. Berserker says, in my opinion, I think the data miners got what they deserve, or I should say they should have gotten a harsher punishment. This is definitely a different sort of opinion. Interesting. We as gamers should appreciate the developers' hard work and pride that they developed on any future content that they work on. We owe it to them with our emotions of being shocked, happiness when we see a content that we were not expecting. That is what keeps people in general, and like developers and producers like Yoshi P and his team, motivated to keep producing more exciting content. Now, when any future information of content and etc. gets leaked by the data miners, that alone is already pooping on the developers' hard work, pride and dedication. This makes them less motivated to work on future content because they know that their hard work is being leaked to the whole world before they could even see our reactions. So in my opinion, no, I don't support any data miners, end quote. Interesting point, Berserker. You have some points there. I'd like to know what you base the sort of opinions of the developers on. I've personally seen very little sort of impact on that. As someone who develops a game, perhaps you have that experience. If you have, personal experience of developing a game and being, quite disheartened when you see people leaking your information. The only thing I can really compare that to is that Blizzard, again, with World of Warcraft, on part have said that it is slightly dismotivating. Some people have expressed their opinions on things and they want to reveal that information themselves or see their reaction. So I do see that point, but at the same time, the hype for their work does increase as we have, factually seen. The search results for content does increase when people mention, the possibility of a blue mage or something like that. So it's really a two-way street. It's not quite as, clear cut as if you leak something, the developer is going to get less motivated and not actually provide equally interesting work. No, because I believe that their motivation, as much as it's very important, they're also getting the monetization of their product, and they're getting paid a wage to create this content. It is slightly disheartening, I would imagine, and could be, seen quite negatively from the most part from people that I've seen in certain interviews of other companies, at least. They sort of look the other way and they trust people individually to to choose whether or not they click on a spoiler linked image, or, you know, if they choose to interact with those individuals. It can be very difficult to hide from the leaks. I think that's the thing that people, for the most part, comment on when I talk about them. Is that it's very difficult to hide from leaks when everybody is posting on the internet about that information. Now, a couple of years ago, I did actually post, you know, this information myself and relay it and join in on the conversations. But more recently, I've tried to stay away completely from that. You know, it's for the better of the community, which is the whole reason I choose not to actually post anything, mostly because Square Enix doesn't want us to report on that information. But obviously, Square Enix doesn't have that sort of control over every platform, especially when it comes to social media, and it's a lot more difficult to track people down. I don't think you can ever escape data mining, and I don't think the punishments or harsher punishments are really necessary, in my own opinion, when it comes to the subreddit. I think that tracking people down who had literally nothing directly to do with these death threats is actually going about it perhaps the wrong way. I mean, you could argue that there wouldn't be death threats if the data mining wasn't present, but at the same time, the individuals who did the death threats should be the ones who took it too far. But, you know, that's just my opinion based on how other people, how other companies do it. I mean, if you can imagine somebody who released World of Warcraft, oh, here's a boss, here's lots of information, this is its mechanics of like what each ability does, rather, but you still don't have that information on how you do it. I think the difference, though, between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV is that World of Warcraft has a public test realm where a lot of this information, and indeed raid testing, takes place, you know, sometimes months before it actually gets released to the public. Now, these are short snippets, but that's enough to get the basic understanding of each of those abilities, and that's how the world-first teams for World of Warcraft spend their days. As soon as the PTR's up and the raid content is sort of accessible, they go on there, they learn the fight as best they can, and then when it comes to release day, they go in there and they defeat it within a couple of hours. Whereas in Final Fantasy XIV, all you've got to go off of is tooltips and ability names and what they do. We don't actually have a way of emulating the fight, as Icarus said. So yeah, it's an interesting situation for sure. But I don't think that necessarily the punishments need to be harsher than that. I mean, obviously, as they've said themselves, for the most part, they accept the punishments. They broke the terms of service. A new precedent was set of what they want to actually enforce in terms of their policy agreement. So that's sort of set in stone now. It won't stop all of the data mining. It will just stop the main source of sort of public information that's clicked on by the most amount of people. We're still going to see that posted on Reddit and social media. That's not going to change. There's always going to be somebody who leaks that information, such as, you know, Blue Fever, etc. People like that are still going to be around. It doesn't stop that. It just means that now, in my opinion, we're going to have a slightly harder time differentiating what is, you know, real information data mined from the game if it's posted on social media and we accidentally see it, and what is false, you know. So it's definitely a flip of the coin. I don't think it's really going to change that issue. People have been data mining games for the longest time, and it's always been up to the person to choose whether or not they actually view that information. But yeah, you definitely have some good points there. Finally, let's finish off with Rising Dawn, who says, I think there's more going on than we realise, considering how lax they have been with other issues, and I believe we don't have all of the information. I hope they permanently banned those who issued the death threats and we just aren't hearing the details. I enjoyed waking up and seeing the data mined items, information, etc. hours before patch releases. It definitely gave me that peeking at the presents feeling, so that was pretty fun. I get them protecting the content, as if people were and had data mined that battle content. It isn't fair to all of the others aiming for world first, and in a way one could say disrespectful to the developers due to the effort they put into it. So quite a similar thing there, only Rising Dawn has taken the sort of different sort of perspective of they like unwrapping the presents. Perhaps not all of the presents should have been opened, and that was probably one of the faults here in particular, and maybe one of the only reasons that that this whole sort of rabbit hole was jumped into in the first place. But out of it, we did get some concrete bans, and we do have that information in regards to, them not wanting the public to involve themselves in data mined or unreleased information at the peril of your own account's termination as a possibility. And ultimately, that's something we didn't have before. So that is a positive we can take from this at the end of the day, that we should never do anything about that. We should never post anything to do with data mining, in particular, like actual unreleased information. And a lot of people are actually going to look at this and go, well, Meoni, aren't you talking about this? Isn't this going to be like a bit of a red flag for Square Enix? No, because I come from a sort of democratic world where we have the freedom to talk about things fairly and subjectively from both sides. And I thought this was definitely worth talking about today. And hopefully you agree too, because as I say before, no opinion is wrong, and the only right answer is really what Square Enix themselves set out and actually enforce. And at least this time we actually got a concrete answer. So anyway, let me know what you think about all of these people talking today, if you have your own opinions on data mining. Next week, however, we'll be moving on to a completely different topic for Tea Time, as you'll no doubt be thankful for if, the data mining stuff is getting talked about too much. But I did want to take this opportunity to reach out to Icarus and the Final Fantasy XIV data mining, basically, and sort of get an understanding of this, because me personally, I don't really know enough about it to have my own opinions enforced, as gospel. I don't know all of the details, but it is definitely interesting. So thank you once again to Icarus and everybody who contributed to the comments. If I did miss your comment and we didn't talk about it, usually that's because of time restraints. I will try to do better in the future. So thank you all kindly for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you are, and I'll see you all next time.